Misconceptions can be referred to as a preconceived notion of a conceptual misunderstanding. These are cases in which something a person knows and believes does not match what is known to be scientifically correct. A lot of people who hold misconceptions do not know that their ideas are false or incorrect. So, one misconception in science is that what objects or materials can reflect light. So, this was a misconception topic that I did for my interview. So, I interviewed 3 students from my practicum. Each student had somewhat of the same ideas, and that the materials they chose, such as water, mirror, glass, wax paper, that they reflected light because they were shiny. These students had a misconception that only shiny things can reflect light because that is what they have seen with their own eyes, so based off their own experiences. I found it to be interesting that all 3 students had the same answers. Contrary to their beliefs, all 24 items on the probe did reflect light. If we can see an object regardless of its observable physical properties, it is reflecting or emitting some light in order for us to be able to see it, and that is what these students did not understand. Another misconception in science is what can float versus what can't float and why. Misconceptions are important in science because they allow us to give our students the opportunities to have what we call discrepant events. These events are occurrences which defy our understandings of the world by presenting unexpected outcomes. By allowing our students to experience these events, we do not give them the answers, but we give them the resources to find the answers. We learn best when we learn through failure, and these events are great ways to have students hungry for the answer of a misconception. So, allowing your students to learn from their failure is going to stick with them more than just giving them the answer. By having students' minds blown and drawing out these misconceptions, we will help them as teachers in the understanding of each misconception of students. To leverage student misconceptions of common science phenomena in my classroom, I will allow students to fail when the time is right and provide them with these discrepant events in order for them not only to want to find the answer, but need to find the answer. An example of this we did in class was the paperclip activity with the water cups. A lot of us failed to guess the correct number of paper clips that would fit in the cup of water, and I found it was more fun to guess and fail than just to have you provide us with the answer, and that kind of event helped us learn the misconception and understand it better. So I said the term progression of standards means how standards build off of each other. So these will allow for us as teachers to monitor student progress and increasing sophistication of student learning. During their years in schools, they will continue to develop these progressions. A progression example of a DCI from kindergarten to middle school would be starting in kindergarten. You have PS2A, forces of motion, and it says, the DCI says, pushes and pulls can have different strengths and directions. So that's in kindergarten. Versus middle school, the DCI says, for any pair of interacting objects, the force exerted by the first object on the second object is equal in strength to the force that the second object exerts on the first, but in the opposite direction, which is Newton's third law of motion. So the students go from the DCI in kindergarten and they're building all the way up to when they're going to learn this in middle school, and it's only going to make sense if they've learned the standards that build up to this. So I said these standards hold us as teachers accountable for student learning. For example, if the student does not learn the standard in second grade, how are they going to continue to learn and build on their learning in third grade of the certain standard? We want to help our students build upon standards and make the concepts bigger. So in class, we talked about the old way of, before we had these progressions, we said they were a mile high and an inch long. And so students were learning a lot of things, but they weren't diving deeper into them. And so that's what these standards help us do as teachers and help our students build. So I said, as a fifth grade teacher, my role focused on teaching that performance expectation would be to provide my class, my students, with different materials that they could explore, and they could then compare and contrast the different properties and the observations that they made on these materials. Students would be given by the teacher materials with different colors, hardness, reflectivity, and electrical conductivity. And as a teacher, I would allow this to be part of the explore activity where they could take notes of the observations based on the properties, and then later they would elaborate and compare and contrast these types of observations. So our first stage in the 5E learning cycle is engage. So this is when we would have things like fact questions, videos that are informative, but not too informative, but they just get the students excited about the topic. The next stage is explore. So this is where you have students with productive struggle. So they're just exploring on their own. They might have misconceptions here. They don't really know what they're about to learn, but they're getting excited and they're exploring the topic. And then you have explain. So explain is where you can have direct instruction. You don't have to. This is where they learn new concepts and terms related to the lesson, and you're going to reveal those answers to the students. So what questions did they have at the beginning? What are their misconceptions? So you're going to reveal those answers to them during the explain stage. In elaborate, the students are going to take their new knowledge that they've learned in the explain stage, and they're going to expand on their new learning. So it might be another activity. They might be writing something, whatever the teacher has planned for that elaborate stage. And lastly, you have evaluate. So here you're going to check for understanding. You're going to make sure that students' misconceptions are totally gone. There's no misconceptions left. And you're going to use an authentic assessment in the evaluate stage. And then it says, why do we teach our science lesson in this order? And that's because it creates powerful learning for our students. So by allowing them to engage at the beginning, explore, like find their misconceptions they don't know, and then giving them the information, allowing them to elaborate on it and like understand it in a deeper meaning before you're assessing them, it really just creates more powerful learning for us and why. So first, I defined what EIE stood for. So it stands for engineering is everything. So in the engineering design process, we use a constant cycle, and most real learning happens when we have a constant cycle. So that's why we're using the constant cycle, so they can continue to improve what they've developed in this stage. So first, well, you can start wherever, but I'm going to start with ask. So in the ask stage, we're going to ask what is the real world problem, what it is, and we have to make it something solvable. So our students can work through this cycle and solve something. So after ask, you have imagine. So this is where you have students brainstorming their ideas for the real world problem, what they would do to solve it, who would they work with, like all the little details they can write down as much as they want. And then you're going to go on to plan. So from your ideas that you've brainstormed, you're going to pick the best solution. What's going to work best for this real world problem? What's going to maybe not be the easiest, but not the most challenging, but the most realistic. After plan, you're going to go on to create. So you're going to use your solution that you've come up with, and you're going to follow through, and you're going to build up on it and try to solve your problem. And then lastly is improve. So here is where you can evaluate your results, see how you can make your plan even better. And then the cycle is going to go on and continue. So then you might go back to imagine, and you're re-brainstorming. Something didn't work, so you're going to change something. What's that going to be helpful and impactful in my learning as a teacher? So I specifically like the bulletin board assignment because I've never made a bulletin board before, but I've always thought they were just kind of like these cute things that you put in your classroom, or like I've never heard of them to be like show what you're learning and like how to make them interactive. I thought that was super cool. I love that challenge that we had, and it also showed like how time consuming they are, and I think that's really important as a teacher to know, like if you're going to put that much time into something, like make it valuable for your students, and something that they're just not going to like think, oh, that's cute. And then which assignment did you feel was not helpful, impactful enough for me to repeat in future semesters? I said that I thought each individual assignment helped us grow as future teachers. Some assignments were not as fun as others, yes, but they taught me a lot and what I have to look forward to as a teacher.